All right, so I think I figured out what people kind of meant when they said use your imagination. Uh, it's funny because normally you don't hear that from people that look like they actually have a lot of imagination. There's a certain separation that you kind of like have to go through from the images that already are in your head of certain situations. I think that's evolution. Because the first thing you do is you imprint on something and then basically it changes. And you either change your outlook on it or it changes on its own eventually. It's practically what I said, what I always used to say, but for some reason it sounds different now. Beautifully different. So I really think it's about just considering things. Huh. So, how would you imagine using your imagination? And for some reason, it really has to apply on what you're trying to do. And the reason it's important is because you're not imagining anything but the structure you're going to be using. You have to create a mental map of how you approach things and how things come out, whether consciously or it gets created on its own, right? Like that's what your mind has to do. And the idea is when somebody looks at you and says, use your imagination, as in like actively imagine if this was what structure would it take for you to get better at things, understand things differently, at different angles? What do you guys want, man? What do you guys want? Professions, it could be applied. Reading, it could be applied. Walking, it could be applied. Having conversations with family, it could be applied, man. Literally, you in your head kind of have to envision how the good scenarios will be, maybe, and what would it take to get them to be good scenarios. Like maybe some topics you avoid them, but we normally do that, but we never do that with a purpose. We do that with all our energy is avoiding without any goal. It's just avoiding the drama. So that's basically a goal of ours, avoiding the drama, maybe. But then, if our goal of ours is not avoiding the drama, if we're in a situation where we don't want to mention stuff, maybe our goal would be just getting better at these situations. It's the same thing. You're still moving, you're still putting the same energy in the same thing. But at the very least, right now, it's you're moving in a certain direction, right? So I think that's how Stoicism needs to be processed. Ooh, I'm actually thinking of a book I can write, of the way I can write the book. Sorry, my bad. All right, so let me show you what happened. Uh, while I was like explaining in the previous video the concept of how you have to disintegrate a thought and you dive deeper into it, and eventually the details basically start connecting together. So I was drawing it, and this is basically it from one point to another. Super fun. I'll explain it one day. But so here basically, and then I put final concept, final concept. It's the same thing, right? Ultimately, you're just looking at it from the different angle. So you have to go into the detail and then like circle them. So maybe it's like this final concept and like, one second, man. So if you imagine the final concept as its own entity, then basically we have to start from one side and we have to go all the way and look at it from a different angle. And then looking at it from a different angle is uh, what allows us to feel small. Come on, baby. What allows us to sink and then basically come up. I need a break 1 second. So that's a lot of thinking that's happening while it's being recorded. That's why it's kind of like stopping. It's just like these videos probably will suck because there's a lot of thinking that's happening while I'm actually talking to you guys. So anyway, so while writing this, I started thinking, and while drawing this, just like to get the image that I had in my head there, because I really think we're spatial people, we're spatial beings, and we evolved spatially. So we have to kind of use our imagination and create a path in our head to whatever we want to do. And we do that subconsciously with the things that we're interested in, right? It doesn't kind of like effectively change who we are or how we interact with the world. But what we're trying to do right now is expand our breadth. It's no longer just like the things that I see in front of me. I want to be able to see different things. And you're going to see good things and bad things. You're going to like judge, assess, you're going to do all that stuff. And ultimately, you're going to have to like figure out how to deal with them and find the most efficient way to like notice these situations and do these things. So I figured while we're actually diving into the detail of any element we're thinking about, if we assess the detail or we're aware of it, then we can allocate it to another element on the other side because ultimately more and more details are like are coming out of the concept for us to kind of like notice and connect them to other details. And when the smallest of details are kind of like fulfilled, they start piling up on each other in order to create the actual, in order to float to the surface. Because now we jumped on the other side and we actually can see from a different perspective. And everything we blocked and we built, it becomes a simple concept at the end. So fundamentally, you can always route yourself back to every single detail you want. And that's what people call experience. Because whatever you discuss with me, like the path to the closest detail relating to it has to be there for me to kind of like know anything about the subject. And that's the depth, the diving of it that you get to. But we can be more efficient in it. So here I wrote, so you can actively bring your things in this, your bring your things in the surface. You can actively. So my goal is only to find more details at first, but as I evolve, my goal should also be kind of like connect these details to things. And I'm going to start noticing what connects on their own and then understanding the theme behind why they're connecting and then basically finding different details to connect to them so that ultimately I have a concept in my mind. It's building up. Why does this work this way? And then we fill these patterns and we connect them together and ultimately we have the overall concept. Be it coding, be it conversation. Like right now, we have the concept of conversation. Any word you want kind of like goes anywhere. It just like comes from randomly the minute you start feeling associating. And we have to do the same thing when it comes to our stuff. So here, so you'll have to write a function that takes care of the details coming to the depth of the concept. So from the concept, you're going down into the details of the concept. Who cares? Who knows what they are, man? You just have to like understand the concepts, uh, thoughts, or anything practical that you want to know more. Just kind of like have to figure out how to connect, how to bring to the surface all its details. The first thing you have to do is dig, and the second thing you have to do is kind of like start shipping them up to the surface. And I wrote it here like you'll have a function that takes care. So the function is a programming thing. So it takes two parameters. Basically, it takes a detail and it has to search for when the detail is entering the depth. It's one function that brings the detail and puts it in the depth. But while it actually reaches the depth, there has to be something that holds it. So instead of something from the other side holding it up, there has to be something from down pushing it up, which means the minute it reaches the depth, it has to pass through this a function. So it's the same function that actually puts it down there, has to check, because if on the way it's putting the detail downwards into the actual depth where all the other details are, instead of searching through all the other details, the minute we get the detail, we take it and we measure it based on our data, because whatever we have prior to this experience, this detail, we have to check if we're able to connect it or not yet. And if it's not yet, it goes to the depth, to the pit, to the playground, to the sandbox. And if it's actually, if it could be connected, then it's connected directly before it goes down to the sandbox. right? Because like we connect it, and then ultimately it's either proven or disproven, but at least it's connected to something instead of it being randomly waiting to be chosen. I hope I'm explaining myself better. I am definitely going to watch this video again, and I still haven't talked about the whole imagination part because I started imagining how best to kind of like build this stuff in your head. Oh fuck, I have a lot of explaining to do. I really hope this turns out to be like a coherent. I don't know. I don't know if I'm not even gonna think about this, man. I'm just gonna explain it. All right. Just gonna explain it. Continuing to explain this stuff.